And welcome back to the Women of Water Get Real virtual summit, where over the 5 days we're together, we are walking through the 5 stages of a water career pipeline and where are we leaking women from those career pipelines? How can we keep them on board? How can we get them back? How can we ensure that everyone has an opportunity to have a full and productive career in the water space and that society has the benefit of all these amazing water professionals? If you're here watching us live or in the replay, go ahead and type below in the chat where you're calling from or where you're watching us from. Any responses that you have. Keep it respectful, but we'll be following up and moderating that chat with any questions and comments that you have. So really, so glad that you're here, and we are so glad to welcome our next speaker, Angela Walker, who comes to us from Brunswick, Georgia, at the Joint Water and Sewer Commission there. Angela, welcome, and thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And I think you're at the office right now. Is your sound up?
Yes, ma'am. I'm here. It's actually 2 p.m. here right now, so I haven't had my lunch yet, but we're gonna get that a little bit later.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to be here. I know that there's always so many demands on our time in the water space, and really, really valuable to be able to share your experiences. You have a really interesting career path as an operator, as a consultant, as a teacher. Why don't you walk us through kind of where you got started in where your career has gone?
I actually started in 1987. As an 18-year-old graduate of high school. I was 5 days fresh out of school, and my best friend's dad worked at the water plant, and my folks couldn't afford to send me to college, so he offered me a position at the wastewater plant. The very first day in there, I said, this won't last long because it smelled awful and it looked even worse. And so here we are 30 years later. For the most part, most of my career has been in wastewater. I started out as the only woman in that facility of 2 facilities. I worked my way up from a trainee to the superintendent of those 2 facilities by the early 1990s, when there was very few Class 1 wastewater operator licensed women in Georgia. And from there, I went to a few other facilities and became supervisor, superintendent. But I was out of the field for several years. My sister was dying, and she wanted me to quit work to take care of her, and I did. She had 3 young children, and so the doctors gave her 6 months, but she lived 6 years. So that took about 6 years off my career path. I was supposed to be a lawyer. I was actually going to law school. So I ended up running a lab for the state highway. And when that job ended, I said, well, it's time to fall back on wastewater. I looked in one of the local water magazines and found this position here for their pretreatment compliance coordinator. When I interviewed, they asked me a couple of questions, and I really didn't know what the position was, and I had never seen a grease trap. And I said, whatever it is, I can do it well. And I struggled for a little bit, but here we are 8 years later, and I've been doing it well. And it's led me to several paths that I didn't see coming. I speak at several conferences. I'm a member of several organizations, one with the Georgia Association of Water Professionals called Women Making Waves, where we pair mentors with mentees. This is my second year being a mentor for those for younger women in the field, and helping them through their stages of what's going on in their lives, and how they can maneuver around some of the problems that we've had earlier in life. And I actually am part of a organization in the Pacific Northwest for putting on conferences and that type of thing for pretreatment. I speak at several conferences all across the country, and I started a consulting business mainly because I had some gentlemen that wanted to turn brown grease out of grease traps into biodiesel, and no one would speak to them. And so people in this industry here know me, and they know I will only bring them someone who is reputable. And they kept taking a good bit of my time. I said, so it's time to start a business. to get paid for my time. And that has led me to several other opportunities with other consultants. And I've actually branched out. I used to speak for free, and I've just had my first paying gig startup. Now I've been asked to come to Argentina and speak at a conference there in August. And I think I'm going to jump that hoop and go there. And I just had an article published in India in a Everything About Water magazine in India. So that was really nice. And so
Wow.
it's been an interesting career. Things I never thought would happen has happened and moved me along. And I never saw this as an 18-year-old wastewater treatment plant trainee. So this field will take you places, and it's going to be here. There is money in it if you apply yourself. So there is money in it, and it's a job not everybody wants to do. It's not a job everybody's cut out for, but it's taken care of me for about 25 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's an amazing career. And as I mentioned before, it's when we talk about women in water, often operators aren't at the table, and we really need to hear the full spectrum of careers. And we are seeing more and more women operators. In fact, I know some operator training programs are specifically they're getting grant money to go after women and get them trained for this. But I kind of wonder if the market is really ready. We churn them out of these schools, and are people willing to work with women? Are they showing up? Are what issues are occurring? I mean, what are some of the sorts of things that if you don't mind sharing that you experienced that weren't going so well?
When I first started in wastewater as the only woman, and very few in the state of Georgia, men were less likely to work with you. They would make it very difficult. And a lot of the work is hard, especially old valves. I started in a plant that had been in use probably 50 years. And some of the stuff that you cannot necessarily do, and some men can't even do it really. But I was fortunate because the men that I worked with knew my father, my grandfather, and my uncle. So they kind of took me under their wing, and they took care of me. So I was very fortunate when I first came along. But I applied for a position to be over a group of men doing collection distribution. And I was one of only 3 people who applied for the job. And one of the persons who actually was qualified and was offered the job wouldn't take it because it was only a 5% raise for him, and he would have been over employees, and in his job he wasn't. And so the other person had been 6 months with us and had no certifications, but he was a man. And so when I asked my director at the time about the position, he's like, "Those guys will eat you alive." But I had already talked to them to see if they had a problem working for me, and they did not. And my thing was, I'm not supposed to have to run the jackhammer. I'm supposed to make sure that the jackhammer gets ran. And so there was a whole thing about that very early in my career. I had to file 2 lawsuits with the EEOC. I won both. One was for discrimination against a woman, and one was for retaliation because once I complained, they tried to terminate me. I did not pursue it to actually get a monetary gain because in this field and in this business, especially back in the 80s and early 90s, you could be blackballed from the whole industry and you wouldn't work. And once I had the "yes, you were right," that was really all I needed, was the "yes, you were right." And the gentleman who had actually did this to me ended up with some pretty rough things happening to them, and they both lost their jobs. And so it was vindication to me, and I couldn't see costing the taxpayers of my hometown money because these gentlemen had discriminated against me. But it was on the books. It should still be on the books. And so that was a win for women. Later now, as I've talked to a lot of women on Facebook, as far as there's the women of water and wastewater, I've talked to women offline that are experiencing things with men, like the equipment is too big for them. The harnesses is too big. They want them to go down in clarifiers with broken ladders. And if they can't do these things, then they won't get promotions or they won't get raises. And that's a really bad thing. And so in certain areas, it is still hard to overcome some of these things. And I actually tell them, it's best probably get your certification and find a better suited environment for you, unless you're willing to fight that battle, because not everybody's willing to fight that battle. But I think as some of the general
what did it take to get that started? I've had experiences like that. I didn't, I talked to a lawyer who kind of steered me wrong. I probably could have pursued things in a different way and been successful, and it has had an impact over the years, because they always ask, in every interview, why'd you leave? And it's, so how did that, where did you turn to for advice, or were you able to just pick up the phone and call the EEOC? Or
Well, I've always been kind of an investigator just by nature. And I just looked online and I found the EEOC, and I contacted them, and they had me write out a statement of what had happened. And I would say, if someone is going to pursue this, to keep good records of when things happen, how they happen. And the main thing for me was, the city that I worked for was already under an injunction, because they had discriminated against African Americans in the past. And they had chosen, even after they came after that injunction, from under that injunction, they had chose to keep the process in place that they had to do, so they would not get themselves in trouble again with that. So that kind of led to, okay, well, we already know this is here. And there was such a discrepancy in the three of us that had put in for this job, that there was really no way they could have just said, okay, we're giving this job to this gentleman. And it been fair. I did end up marrying that gentleman later on, though. So that's a whole other story. But I did, and when I actually spoke to him about the position, because some of the guys there, how gossip gets out. Oh, she's coming for your job, and she's upset that you got the job. And I told him, I have nothing against you. I'm more power to you. If they gave you that job, go run it, and he's actually still in the field now, and he works here with me in another position. It was kind of interesting how it all played out. It took about 2 years, a lot of depositions, talking to me, talking to him, our HR department, and the retaliation was the harder one to prove, but there was paperwork to where they actually had tried to terminate me. And once I had filed the retaliation suit, they pulled back that termination. It's like, okay, we're not going to do that. And so it was very hard. And I say, for anybody who's going to do that, it is you have to have thick skin. You have to be willing to be kind of an outcast at that point, at that department, for a little while, because if not, then you won't make it. They will alienate you. They will work against you. It's hard. And so you have to have a thick skin to do that. If you don't want to work under those conditions, and you see that it's happening and you don't want to follow through with that, I say find another location or change over. There's more women in the lab facilities than in operations. So a lot of women will go into the laboratories and do the lab work. And there's a lady that I work with. She works out of the city of Savannah. She actually started as an operator, and she was very good at it. And she swapped over to a lab, and then she went to a private company. That's one thing that private industries actually pay more than municipalities. So we lose a lot of help to these industries. Actually, one of my industries that I regulate called me the other day and said, hey, we have a position open. Do you know any wastewater operators who needs a job? Like, what are you paying? So, and I do put the word out and let people know, hey, if you're looking for something different. And the lady here who, one of our operators here is, she's experienced some of these things. I try to mentor her and tell her ways around them. And actually, when she first came here, the guys didn't want to really work with her, but they found that she's a hard worker and that she holds her own, and she can run this plant by herself. It's like a 7 million gallon a day plant. She can run it by herself. She can pull pumps. In fact, she can outwork some of these guys. So they now don't have a problem working with her. So it's been really interesting to watch her overcome some of those things. And I think as the older generations retire off, I think it will become easier for women in this field, as some of the older people with the mentalities that they had and coming into the field where it was predominantly male. I think that it will get easier for women now as more of them are retiring off and leaving these jobs open, and more women are actually pursuing higher careers in this field instead of just coming in and being an operator or being a lab analyst. They actually want. I was a superintendent in my early 30s, and one reason I don't really pursue my superintendent is getting ready to retire, but I don't really see myself putting in for that position because it's not the job, it's the employees. Yes. I would rather, if I would rather it be a me thing. If it gets done, I did it. If it didn't, I did it, and because you end up with attitudes and when I first became a superintendent, I had been working with the people and I became their superintendent, and it was quite interesting to go from being their coworker to their supervisor. And that was really hard. With people that you work with. I do understand why sometimes when new people come in, they hire a whole new force, because it is hard to work with people who have already worked with you under one level and then you become their boss. And we worked out the problems, of course. It wasn't easy in some cases. And the worst part of it for me was having to terminate someone. I always say people terminate themselves, you don't terminate them, but it still was a hard thing for me to terminate someone from a position. Even if it was really a valid reason for terminating someone, it was still hard. And so I prefer pre-treatment. I prefer consulting. I prefer teaching. I enjoy the teaching and trying to get more women in the field. And I get a lot of people who call me and say, hey, can I talk to you about this? Or can you help me with this? And even the lady in Savannah that worked in the lab, she said, I'm having a problem with some of my lab stuff. Can you help me? And I said, well, I don't do much lab every day, but let me get you in touch with our lab analyst. And so come to find out, they had went to school together into a lab class. So they already knew each other. So it was really good. They worked together, got her back up where she needed to be. And they're now acing their test there. And it's the thing of you really just need to work together and try to help each other as best you can with your skills and with their skills, learn from each other. And I think that with more women coming into the field, it will get easier for them.
Yeah. And I think, you mentioned earlier that you got family in the industry, and that can be helpful. I think a lot of women who have been successful might be overlooking the fact that they may have some implicit protection from having that guys might be a little more hands off than otherwise. And then also just having connections, being able to ask other women, we've done these private women water leader circles on Zoom calls and just kind of facilitate women, peer support sorts of things. And, especially where women are the only one, sometimes if they're asking for help, it might be seen as, well, you just can't do the job, or evidence that you don't belong in the position or whatever. And so it's having that network can be really important. And what are some of the other ways that you're supporting other women or advising other women, or any especially as you go more into teaching? What are the things that you would tell women to think about as they are, really making their way into the workforce?
I would tell them to get as much education as they can, to educate themselves, work smarter and not harder, find a better way to do things. I was once, in my early career, I was terminated from a position as a supervisor because I could not move a 55-gallon drum of chemicals from one room to another on a grass area with a hand truck. And I could not drive a land application truck down a field and get out of the truck and hang on the side of the truck and open a valve, because the valve was so old that it didn't want to open, even though I had two operators who this was their job, not mine. And the gentleman that was over the department actually tried to get me to quit. And in this, he put me down in a manhole into our influence station. And I suited up and I went down into the lift station. And as soon as I got down in there, he said, "You can come out now." And right before our plant, there was a hot dog factory dumped into it. So this was a awful environment to be in. But when I came back out, about a week later, he called me in the office and he was terminating me. And that was the reasons, was I couldn't pull this 55-gallon drum of chemical from one place to another on grass. And I couldn't open this valve going down, which no one should have been doing under any circumstances, because it was not safe. You can hurt your back. There's lots of things that can happen. You could fall off the truck run over you. You know, you're out here by yourself. And he told me, he said, "I would not have put my wife in that lift station." And I said, "Sir, I chose this field and I knew what I was getting into when I chose this field. You protect yourself and you take care of the safety issues before you go down in, and you hope for the best." And so that he had actually tried to get me to quit by wanting me to go down in this station, and I'm not a quitter, so I didn't. And I've seen ladies in the past that they haven't been given the proper equipment to do things. There was a lady on one of the Facebook sites that said that they wanted her to go down in this clarifier to clean it, but the gear that they was giving her, the harnesses, was too big. She was too small for the harnesses, and they wouldn't get her the right size harness. And then the ladder that was in the unit to go down in was broke, and it wouldn't even sit like it was supposed to. And I told her, I said, "Well, I can't really tell you what to do, but I can tell you what I would do. I would document, I would take pictures, I would document, and I would tell them, I am not going in this hole till you get me proper equipment." And I don't know really what happened with that. She and I talked a little while offline of that one, but I told her I would ask them to get me the proper equipment, but I would do it in writing. I would send a email to my supervisors and say, "The equipment is too big for me. The ladder is not safe. If you will get me the proper equipment, I will be glad to go down in here and do what you need me to do." But I think they were using that to try to get rid of her. And it really hurt her because, you know, we're not used to dealing with those things in 2022 at the time, because it was last year. And you find there's still bias in this field, and not so much as in water. I think in water, it's a little more equaled out as far as more lab and water production at the plants. Now, the fields of distribution and collection out in the systems is still predominantly male. I have seen some women in our Women's Making Waves group with the Georgia Association of Water Professionals that actually do go out and change out water mains and that type of thing. And so I give those women all the kudos. I was never one that wanted to just get out there and do all of that. I decided I better get an education so I could move on up. But there are women now doing that, not as often, but it's coming around to that also. But as equipment gets better and easier to use, it makes it better for women in this field too.
Yeah, that's very, I mean, that's, you know, getting rid of some of the macho stuff and the trying to prove that they can lift stuff, and, you know, just general safety. And a lot of times women are in charge of the health and safety stuff because it's a nice little administrative kind of task, which, you know, then sets them up even more to be, you know, kind of the outside of the person wagging their fingers, saying, no, you can't do that. But yeah, I mean, when I started, I was out in the field. I had my steel toe Red Wing boots, and there's a lot better equipment. There's some very recent studies. We are talking to some folks at the summit, you know, new companies that are popping up that specialize in creating, you know, boots and other personal protective equipment that's really fitted for women. And you know, fits women. You know, it's not just pink and shrink, right? It's fit women's bodies. It's, you know, different stages of life, pregnancy, whatever. You know, that's hopefully going to make things better. Although, you know, we talk sometimes about this idea that you know, as the older folks retire, these old sexist, racist, misogynist baby boomers or whatever are gone, everything's going to be better. And I mean, you know, you look at politics today, you look at, you know, Proud Boys, you look at, you know, there's a lot of younger folks also that are, it's kind of like a new generation.
They are
You know,
passing it along.
where it's fun. It's a sport, you know, to see if you can get away with things. You know.
I think they are passing it along, and it all comes from how you're raised, and until you break that generational gap, there are still going to be those people who have those issues. And even now, when I go out on into the field, and I have a guy with me who actually is one of our techs, and he does a lot of lifting the manhole covers and that type of thing when I go out in the field. And as soon as a man comes out of a building, they go straight for him to talk to him, and he just points them in my direction. And then they're looking at me like, okay. And then I get a lot of people call my superintendent. That's what he was talking to me about a few minutes ago. Someone had called on me about a decision I had made that they didn't like. And when he was still talking to me, he's like, well, I'm going to call them back and tell them that they're still held to what you told them to do. And I still actually run wastewater plants. I pull call here because in the state of Georgia, you have to be a class 2 or higher operator to be to run a wastewater plant by yourself, to collect the samples that are required for the state permits. And so I pull call overnight and check plants by myself 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I actually work weekends at 2 of our plants. We have 3 facilities here, and 2 of those plants I run. Up until about maybe 8 months ago, I ran one of their plants for 10 and a half months with one tech and continued to do my job. So I try to keep up with running the plant, because you never know when you may have to call and say, hey, do you need an operator? So I keep my operations stuff going, but I will refuse to do things that are unsafe. And I won't work with equipment that is going to cause me to be harmed because it hasn't been kept up. We have a maintenance staff here, so if there's something going on, I'm like, hey, you got to come and check this equipment, because I can't open it. I'm not going to force it. I'm not going to hurt myself trying to do it. And so I'm hopeful that as equipment gets better, it will be easier on women, and they can come in and just say, I don't care what you say about me. I'm going to do my job and you do yours, you know. And I'm hoping that as that mentality comes in, and that more women want to come into the field, it will actually get easier for them to come in and to actually progress here and change some of the overall attitudes of the people who are in the higher up positions. And like I said, we have 15 operators here, only 1 woman. And with me doing just operating on the side sometimes, because they don't have enough higher certified operators to actually run the call without running 2 or 3 people every week, you know. And so I'm hoping that as it gets a little better, that the women who are in the field will go and recruit others and say, hey, it's not that bad, you know, come on, and there's money here, you know, it's better than what you're doing there. And
yeah. I mean, it's you know, it can be definitely a good option compared to, you know, waiting tables with no benefits and temp work and whatever. You know, there's you know, to actually have more of a career path, and you know, and you talked about education and being willing to step into those leadership roles. You know, I kind of wonder if women are, you know, especially I work with a lot of younger women. And you know, we have interns and staff and whatnot, and kind of drawing the balance of, well, first of all, being decisive. I mean, when we're dealing with water, this is serious stuff. We need to be able to make decisions and say, this has got to get done. It's not a TikTok video and, you know, hey, you know, whatever to like these, like, we've got to be able to say when things get done, and also be willing to do it and not just advise other people, you know, to make sure things are followed up on. So
it does get interesting. When I first started out in wastewater, I'm the type, I want to know everything. I could run the backhoe, I could run the front end loader, I could drive the dump trucks. I changed 2-ton chlorine cylinders alone. And so in my early years, I did that. And so then when I hired women in my local town to work for me, we lost our grass cutting crew at one time. And I bought lightweight weed eaters so that we could go. And I'm like, just go do 30 minutes at the time and come back and do your job. And everybody takes turns and we're going to get it done. And I took my turn too. And I've cleaned drying beds back. There's not a lot of drying beds still left, especially in the colder states. But I've cleaned drying beds with shovels. right beside the guys and shovel them into bobcats to be pulled out. And I told the ladies that work for me, I will never ask you to do anything I haven't done myself. And so I had one lady, I asked her to go, and there's not many trickling filter plants still left in the country. We still have one in my hometown, poor place. But I had to ask them to go out and pull plastic and stuff off of it. And she went out there for about 2 seconds and she came back in and she's like, I quit. I'm like, okay, thank you. You just weren't cut out for this field, I see. And so, there, like I said, it's not for everybody. And we've had men come here, and one young man worked for us, and he told me he had started out as a meter reader, and he wanted to advance and make more money. So he came to the wastewater plant and he said, Miss Angie, I just don't think I'm going to make it. And then we came in one morning and he had put his uniforms at the front door. He didn't even come in the plant. He put them at the front door and was gone. And so it's not a field for everybody, especially the wastewater. Mm-hmm. I say we're a special breed. If you're in this field, you're a little bit cuckoo. That's what we've always said. We're a little bit cuckoo for choosing this, but it actually allowed me to raise my daughter alone when she was little. And I've actually tried to get her husband now to come and work with us here, because the job he has no benefits. That's one good thing about working in government, is that you have benefits. You can take care of your families. And I was able to take care of my daughter and raise her by myself and have a good living. And once you get in it, if you know and you take care of yourself, you protect yourself from the hazards. When I first started in the field, we had these old centrifugal pumps that you had to pull the balls out of, and there may be razor blades or needles or anything stuck up in there. So we've come a long way with the types of pumps that we use, and you don't have to open those things up and stick your hand up in there and wonder what you're going to grab out when you're grabbing it. So yeah, so most women would have quit back then with that. So it wasn't fun stuff. And I didn't have to do it regular. I wanted to know how to do it, and the guys were like, I got it. And I'm like, no, because you may not be here, and I need to know how to do this stuff myself if you're not here. I don't need them to say, oh, well, she can't do it. And so I think it's all in the environment that you're in and the support that you have from upper staff. If you have a woman in the field, you need to have the support from upper staff, that no one can just mistreat her, or they cannot get by with treating her different than they do someone else. When I first started, and this was a little joke, when I first got to my plant back in 1987, every drawer in the lab was filled with these girly magazines. And the superintendent said, get every one of them out of here, get them out of here. And so I just had to sit for a while they cleaned out the whole lab. And I'm like, you guys had nothing else to do. And so it was kind of funny. But, when you go in places and they have the little calendars up, that type of thing, I learned really early on, you need to be one of the guys when you first go into a place, and it works better. If they know you're not there, oh boy, we got to watch every word we say, or, not to just let them talk to you any kind of way or mistreat you, but, you just got to kind of roll with the punches. And as long as it's not just really hurting you or being just really disrespectful, just be one of the guys and say, come on, man, we got work to do. We got other things to do. So it got interesting back in the 80s and early 90s. And with the more women that I see, I used to go and be at conferences, I would be the only real woman working in the wastewater, and all the others would be wives of the husbands sitting there. It's like, oh boy. And now you see a lot of women, especially with when we get to the Georgia Association of Water Professionals conferences, and you go into this Women Making Waves committee and see all of the women that are in there in the different walks. There's directors, there's consultants that are vice presidents of some of the biggest companies in the country. AECOM, the vice president came and spoke to us, and I had breakfast with her to talk to her about a little job. And it's really interesting. You never know where you can go. You got to put yourself out there. And the more you know, and the more because people used to laugh when I would go and speak at these conferences. They're like, you're doing that for free? You're paying for your whole hotel? You're paying for this? I'm like, yeah, because I want to do it. And now it's led me to paying positions. And so it's like, it was all worth it. And that was where it was intended to go. And people call me now and say, hey, can you speak for us? Can you come to do this? And it's led me to Arizona and Washington and now Argentina in the fall. And so it's getting a little interesting. I'm getting a little older now. I'm 53. I'm looking to actually retire from full-time work, probably within the next 5 years, to just more do teaching from home, that type of thing. And maybe do some consulting to train younger operators. We have a program here with our Rural Water Association that has asked me to teach a class for high school students. They want to offer them this class free and have us train them so that they can go and sit for the exam and maybe come into this field right out of high school. Because our conference last year at one of the associations was who's going to fill their shoes, because no one's coming in this field. It's not only women, it's no one's coming in this field. One thing, the pay isn't very complimentary with some of the other fields that you could go in, engineering or, even plumbing in some areas. And so there's a discrepancy in the pay, and it's a thing of how are we going to get these people? Where are we going to get them at? And I just got an email 2 days ago about coming to volunteer for a career expo that's for like 10,000 high school students and early college students. And they're going to be the Georgia Association of Water Professionals are going to be a part of that, have a booth there. And it's to try to get people to come into the field. It's going to be at the World Congress Center in Atlanta. And they're trying everything they can to get people into this field. And we've got to find a way to make it more, I guess you would say, pretty it up to try to get them in here. Make it more interesting for them to come into the field. Let them see the women who have advanced and who have made careers and who are happy in their careers and that did stand the test of time and backed off all those bullies that were there. And it's like, you better get out of my way. Years ago, I worked at an industrial plant, and this man would just give me a hard time. He was a maintenance guy, and he would talk to the ladies on the floor any kind of way. And one day he came and tried to talk to me like that. And I said, if you ever talk to me like that again, I'm going to throw you in that vat. And so he didn't come back there and say anything else to me. And I meant it. And so, it's like, don't come back here trying me. I'm not the one. We're not going to move. We're not going to have that here. And so I think we have to stand up for ourselves and let them know we're just not going to take it.
You mentioned having to take some time off, take care of family. And, this is something that we feel like it really needs to be considered part of the women's career cycles. That so often that is something that comes up, right? That we are, whether it's child care, elder care, your sister, somebody gets sick, if women get sick, and as single women, we're taking care of ourselves, don't have someone at home taking care of us. How does that work out as far as being able to come back in? I'm sure you were, I don't know if you were renewing your license every year while you're out of your own pocket while you're at home.
I wasn't.
Did you get the whole, hey, all the technology is so advanced now, we have to go hire new kids just out of high school? Or, how do we get more women to be able to come back? Or when you talk about trying to fill those positions, if there are women in other fields that want more steady pay, better benefits, get outside to do something more with their hands, whatever, are we even considering people who are older, not just the kids coming straight out of school?
I think we are considering older people now, because I see in our workforce people who have come from other walks of life, and they're starting here as inspectors and as people in the field. We have a couple of maintenance guys that came in later in life. And when I actually was out for those 6 years, I let my license expire because I was working at a little restaurant, hours that I could work. I had a young daughter, and I put school and career on hold, and I let my license expire. So then when I came back, when my sister told me, I'm not going to be here much longer, you need to find a job. And I said, well, I'll do that when something happens, she's like, no, find a job. And so I started looking that January, and she passed away in April. And I started working for the state highway in June. And so for like 6 years, I actually ran labs for the state highway, testing building materials for roadways. And one thing that I found when I did come back into the field, when I needed a job, even though I had let my license expire, that class 1 license being the highest in the state meant something. And part of my hiring process was, you will have this class 1 back within a year. We will pay for you to go get the training, but you will have this license back. So in the state of Georgia, if your license is expired less than 2 years, you just have to pay an added fee and get it back. If it's over 2 years, you have to retake the test. You have to take training and you have to take the test again. And so I did that. And I found that I help our lab out sometime too when they're really short. And I found that a lot of the test procedures hasn't really changed. A lot of the equipment is like walking back in time to some of the testing. And I could still do every step, even though it had been years since I had picked up some of the stuff. And I found that really what you know and how far you go is a big thing, because they actually had a state inspector look at the applications they had for this position. And the state inspector said, this is your pretreatment person. Because I had not only been a superintendent and a supervisor, I had ran a cruise in Birmingham, Alabama, who were TV operators and backcon crews. And I was a liaison between the county there and the contractors lining the pipes, and and I worked for the contractors who was cleaning and TVing the pipes. And so it's all in what you put yourself out there for. And I say, just even if you don't know if you can do a position, if you think that you want to put in for that position, put in for it. And go in there with the mentality that I already have this. And if they ask you something, just like I did, do you know what the FOG program is? And I said, no, but I'm sure I can do it well. And then that was fats, oils, and grease. I found out later. And when I came into the position, the lady who had this job before me had been gone about 3 months, and no one here knew what she did. So I came into an office and I sat here and went through files, and that same EPD inspector, our Georgia EPD inspector, called me and said, you got this report due by this date, and this is the information that's needed. And I said, okay. And so I had a commercial hauler, because in the state of Georgia, we have a commercial hauler law that governs the people who pump out these grease traps at restaurants and food service establishments. And the guy's like, you inspect trucks, right? And I'm like, no. And so I went up and into city of Savannah, and they were very helpful. I went up and worked with them all day one day to go out and see how they did their program for their fats, oils, and grease, and was able to master that. It took a lot of studying on my part alone doing it, and learning the regulations, because in pretreatment, you have to not only know your county ordinances, but you have to know the state laws and the EPD the EPA regulations. And you have to, in this position that I have, you have to have a thick skin, because people don't want to comply a lot of times. And I don't find this my industry so much as more of the food service establishments, the people who do oil and grease, like car washes, that type of thing. They don't want that added expense of pumping these things. And I also do plan review for any new or construction or any remodels that come in. And so I have to say what the regulations is for people to put it in, and they'll question every man here. They'll question our engineers. They'll question my superintendent, every man here, to say, well, she's wanting us to do this, and we don't have, and I don't think we have to do this. And I'm like, well, when were you educated in grease? Please tell me, when were you? I had to tell one of our engineers one day, and he took it well, but a civil engineer contacted him and sent him an email and said, well, she says we need this, and I just don't think we do. And our engineer emailed me, and he said, well, Angela, of course you have the last say, but I just want to know what I should tell him. He says it's just a limited menu and they don't need this. And I said, well, here is their limited menu. It's 8 pages. Please look at it and then tell me they don't need their grease trap. And I said, what you should have told this gentleman was, did Miss Walker tell you what you needed? And you should have left him alone. I said, because I don't meddle in engineering, because I'm not trained in engineering, but I am trained in sewers and I am trained in grease. And it really makes me feel incompetent for everyone to question my decisions. These aren't my regulations. They are joint waters regulations, and I'm just the one who has to enforce them. I said, so next time someone asks you, please refer them to me and I will take care of their questions. And so he wasn't very happy with me, but he did send it back to the guy and say, I had to endure Miss Walker's upset, and you need to do whatever she told you to do. And so it's like, I tell them something, I could actually get some productive work done if I wasn't always answering for some decision I make. And I don't think they would do this if it was a man making these decisions. Yeah. And so I used to be the only woman that sat at the table. And now it's only the assistant in our planning department. And one lady from finance sits at our table for the planning meetings. But I was the only one there that was a regulator or that had any say in any of it. And it's like they would send out stuff and say, oh, these plans are okay with comments. And when I would say it was non-compliant, they would still mark the plans compliant. Then I have to wait until it's all said and done and refuse to sign their certificate of occupancies to get the stuff done. And I'm like, well, they were like, well, she doesn't know what she's talking about. We did what we were told. I said, well, it's not my fault they didn't send you my notes as to what you needed to do. And maybe you need to go and talk to them and find out why they did not tell you what you needed to do. So I finally got that taken care of about 2 years ago, that if I mark something non-compliant, they won't approve it until the people have made the plans compliant. And I think that was a win for my position, because and like I told him, I don't think that if it was a man, you would be questioning every decision I make. And it gets me sometime, because I'll get called on a position by someone higher up, and they'll be going to make another decision than I do. And I say, okay, well, when I have a problem, I will call you and let you go handle it, because you're the one told them they can get by with this. And one of our directors told one of our ladies that work with Miss Angie don't care. She'll tell you about yourself. She don't care what your position is. And I'm like, well, if you've told me to do one thing and then I do it, and then you say, oh no, they can get by, then yeah, I'm going to let you handle it from then on out, because they're not going to listen to me anymore. They're going to know all I have to do is call him and it's done. And so I don't take it personally. I just mark it down as, okay, this was approved by such and such, and go about my business. And I'm not going to argue with it. It's like, I'm being paid by the hour. I'm getting paid whether you do it or not. If someone else says it's okay, hey, it's okay with me, go ahead. We had an instance here where I wanted a business to do something, and it was overridden. And I said, okay, well, they actually, instead of wanting to install, they just wanted to have an increased cleaning schedule. And I told him, I said, okay, well, when they're behind, I'll let you know. So I sent my boss an email and I said, oh, they're behind. And so the next week he sent me a newspaper article, they're closed. I'm like, yeah, I figured that was going to happen, because if you can't afford to do what you're supposed to do in the beginning, you're not going to stay open. I've seen it here. We have about 700 food service establishments here, because we have a St. Simon's Island, which is a tourist, one of the biggest tourist places in Georgia. And if you can't do what you need to do up front to stay in regulations with your county, city, in the Department of Public Health and with us, then you're not going to make it. And I've seen it too many times that within a few months they're shut down. And it's like, I try to, help them. And it's like, someone needs to actually be teaching people about what it takes to open businesses, really like 3 years of capital before you decide to open. And here we have a 40% poverty rate in our city, and it's really high. And I said that there's some break, because the people here who are hired, everybody here is hiring. Every job you go into, there's hiring, and they can't keep qualified people. And I said, someone needs to be training these people out of high school, just common things like courtesy, if you're going to be in food service, or if you're going to be in customer service, and give them some type of boost to want to have a better work ethic. There's some breakdown in there that this younger generations, a lot of them are not getting. And I don't know if it's in the schools, or if it's in the parents, or if it's in the government, but someone needs to be looking at it as a whole and saying, man, in a few years, we're going to be in trouble. We're all going to be in trouble.
I hear that. How are you using your new platforms now that you're getting all these speaking opportunities. You're involved with these industry associations. I mean, are there things that utilities could be putting in place to foresee and to handle issues when they come up, and just acknowledge that they come up? It's not just a matter of raising awareness, and if everybody tells their story and then suddenly everyone will be, woke and they won't do these things before. We know that things are going to come up, and to provide some sort of pathway. Is there anything that you can do in your role to help influence the industry to make, not just, for one, helping women to understand things like, if you do need to file and what that takes, or how to keep track of notes as things come up. But also, how do we change the organizations so that when things come up, not if, but when things happen, that there is a way to handle it that's something other than HR closing ranks, around the organization and retaliation occurring.
I haven't really found that in a lot of government and municipalities that there is that mentality yet. I try to, when I'm speaking, I try to let people, I actually call myself the comedic relief. I give them a little information that they need, and I usually add in a funny story or two that's actually related to what is going on, or what I'm teaching, to explain how things happen. But I think that if you do speak up more, if you talk to your supervisors in a way that is, hey, can I talk to you for a few minutes? I think that this is happening, or I think this is being experienced. And here with our organization, there's a thing of, once you're just as culpable of it as everybody else. So there has been times in the past where gossip has gotten to be about someone not being treated quite right, and that type of thing. And I will go to the superintendents and I'll be like, you know what the HR policy says about this, right? And we're supposed to, like, well, why are you coming to me? I said, well, it got to me, and once it gets to me, then I'm just as culpable as everyone else. And he's like, well, I guess I can see that is your role. And then it's actually pulled out, and the people are talked to, and it's tried to get to the bottom of the issue and make it a better place for everybody to work, make it not as tense, I guess you would say. And so with the mentees that I have, I try to instill in them a sense that you can do whatever you want to do. If there's something that you think you want to do in the field and you don't really know, go ask to train in it. Go, hey, give me a week and let me see if I can do this. Or if there's a position that you want and you're not even sure that you can do it, just jump on it. You can always go back to what you were doing. That's what I always say I keep my license for. And I actually have a South Carolina Class A physical chemical wastewater license that they gave me in reciprocity of Georgia because of my consulting work. I help with pretreatment plants, and we were trying to put a pretreatment plant in South Carolina. But I think that if you want to do something, educate yourself on the good, the bad, talk to people who are in that field. I think until we actually get some maybe better regulations or better understanding in the field, women are still going to have problems. I know that I've been fortunate because we right now have a female assistant director. And I used to encounter problems like when I would have to get out information to the public, like with the new EPA amalgam rule that came out a few years ago. I needed to get information out to all the dentist office. And it used to be, oh, well, we'll give you the list and you can mail them out. That means I'm stuffing envelopes, and trying to fill out all this stuff. And so I found a way. You have to find inventive ways to get things across. So in our plan meeting, we had a dentist office come up for a review, and I marked them non-compliant. And they're like, well, why are you marking this non-compliant? And I said, well, I don't have their amalgam paperwork, and I can't get anyone to listen that this is about to be a problem. The EPA is going to require the EPD to have these things in place by October. And it's going to be joint water in trouble, not me. And so our assistant director was actually sitting in the meeting and listening, and she sent me an email. She said, "Can you please send me this information?" Yes, ma'am, I'll send it to you. And I said, "I've been trying to get them to do it for 3 years." And so then she sent it to our administrative supervisor, and he's like, "Oh, well, we can get her a list." And she sent back, "No, I think you need to handle this," because he has staff. I don't. And so I'm like, yes. Whoo, one for the women. Yes, because I thanked her. I said, "I am so glad you were here, because these things I have been suffering for years. And I am so glad you were sitting in that meeting and was allowed to change this whole process. And so I don't have that issue now." So we really need women in higher positions to help facilitate us moving through these processes and making it easier for those coming along behind them, and for the women who are in those positions to be willing to help them, to be willing to say, "Hey, I got you. What do you need?" The operator will come here and knock on my door, and she'll be like, "This is what I'm going through, and I just can't take it anymore." And we're like, "Well, there are other jobs, you don't have to just work here. There's, there's industries, you have the license now, you can go anywhere in Georgia and work if you want." And I think some women are scared to complain. They're more, they're scared of not having the job that they need for their families, with insurance, that type of thing. And I think that if we, as older women in the field who have been there, actually say, "Hey, I'm here for you. What can I do to help you maneuver these problems that you're having?" and just make ourselves more open, I think that it'll help them to progress more when they see that, hey, it's possible for me to be the director. It's possible for me to be the finance officer. It's possible, possible for me to be the superintendent of these beautiful wastewater plants. So it's like,
yeah. And I think, having women up in higher positions and also support within the organizations, we've always had women in water, as admin assistants, as accountants, or bookkeepers, as doing marketing communications, and then we get women who are getting all these amazing licenses and degrees and everything to be professionals doing water work, also expected to do all the other stuff, or having women who are in those positions not wanting to work for a woman superintendent or a woman director, right? So I think that certainly had been my experience, and we definitely need that support within women in other positions as well.
I think it helps too with like the summit that's being put on, and with the conferences that are going on. I think it helps when you see women in as vendors, and women who have these firms that are at one of the conferences I went to, there was a woman that was over a group that was coming in and doing design build for wastewater plants. As you go, you design and build it. And I think it helps for women to go to these conferences and for these summits, these type of things, and see that there's women in other areas that you don't have to just, even if you come into it as a wastewater operator. I was going to be a environmental engineer. After I got into the field, came back into the field, I said, "Well, I'm too old to be a lawyer." I had it was a long road. I do have a bachelor's in psychology and a Juris Master's in international law, but I still work in wastewater. But I think both of those help me. Really, the psychology helps me in dealing with the people a whole lot, because I have to think about sometimes, what uniform am I wearing? What truck am I in? What time of day it is? So I know how to respond to someone before I just say, "You need to get out of my way." So I have to think about, is it before 4 o'clock or after 4 o'clock, or what do I have on? What truck am I in? Am I in my personal car? So I think as we get into letting women see what's actually out there, that there is more to just one position. You're not stuck there, and you can have a fulfilling career. You can do whatever you like. If you say, "Hey, I want to be a consultant," go to contacting consultants. Somebody will hire you. I actually had created a online site for Brown and Caldwell, one of the bigger companies across the country. And I didn't put in for any jobs. And they sent me an email. "We see you created a profile, but you did not put in for a job. Would you please come back and apply?" And I'm like, okay, maybe I need to apply with them. But things will be put in front of you that you never thought. if you just keep your eyes open and think about what you want. When I came here, my dream was to live next to the ocean. And so my superintendent said, well, how long are you going to be here? And I said, I don't know. He said, well, I thought you wanted to live here because this was your dream job because you want to be close to the ocean. I said, well, now I have a new dream. And so,
well, now you're going to be traveling the world.
yes,
you're going to be getting paid for it. And that's a whole nother aspect of the career path is, what is that next career? That it is possible for people to be collecting a pension or thinking about retirement in their 50s, and to be able to say, okay, what else can we do? There's still a lot of life left and people who are in their 50s.
Yes,
I think people kind of forget that.
Yes, I actually said when I was younger, my father was a paint contractor, and he climbed 40-foot step ladders a lot of times, and he had fell and broke his heel, fell off of a 20-foot step ladder. And as he got older, the injury had gotten worse. And some days he would come home and his heel would be swole up. His ankle would be swole up to like 3 times the size. And I said, I worked with my dad for about 2 years in high school, in these hot houses and things. And I said, it taught me what I did not want to do. And it actually taught me that I needed to educate myself, because as I got older, I would not be able to depend on my body as much. And I would still need to make an income. And my dad had to end up retiring in his early 60s because he just couldn't do it anymore. And he had no other thing to fall back on. And it was really sad that he went from making thousands of dollars a week to making just Social Security. And it was barely enough to live on, and I was offering, hey, what do you need this week? Or what do you need this month? And he's like, I'm not taking your money. And I said, well, I'm leaving it whether you take it or not. But he and my mom both taught me a work ethic. My mom is still living. She's 73 now. And she actually took care of me a few months ago. I had to have a major surgery, and her and my stepfather came and took care of me. And I'm like, whoo, I can't be sick much, but I was glad that she wanted to do it. But they're not in the best of health, and it made me realize, hey, I've got to take care of my health too, because I want to be doing better at 73 than my mom is right now. And a lot of it has to do with the way we've come a long way with fitness and health and food. Back then, when they were certain foods that we were eating more of Crisco and lard instead of these oil-based butters.
Slide down easier, right?
Yeah. And so you look and see what you don't want to do in the future, or what your body's not going to allow you to do in the future. And you have to think about that. You have to think about what you're going to do. Now, in my early 20s, I locked in a retirement with my first job, because after 10 years, I was vested, and I had 13 years before I ever left there. So, and then it so happens that this job is under the same retirement plan with my first job. And now I have over 20 years vested with the retirement, so that I will draw from that. And I say the more you make now is the more Social Security you're also going to make in the future. And I say that you just need to think about, we don't need to think about just right now. We need to think about where we want to be when we're in our 30s, 40s, and 50s and 60s. And do we want to be working it? I went to see a doctor the other day. I actually fell at work at one of the plants and hit my knee on a concrete thing, and I had to go see a doctor. He was 85, still working. I'm a doctor. Right. I say he must just want to work, but I don't want to be out there working at 85 on a 7-to-7 position. And I see so many people who retire from their jobs and then have to go to Walmart or somewhere to make a little added extra. My mom and my stepdad, I paid for their pharmacy medical plan for years because they couldn't afford their medicines. And now finally, Social Security, Medicare has made it free for them. So I don't have to pay it anymore. I pay my mom's phone bill for her cell phone because it's just not enough with their income. And you have to think about, what do you want in your future? How much income are you going to need? And where do you want to be? I want to be able to go on vacations and that type of thing. So I always just say strive.
Women are thinking about that, or relying on their husband's retirement, or spending it all on their kids and not, thinking about themselves.
It happens. And I'm about to get married next month, and my future husband didn't want me to work. And he and I had quite a a conflict. And I told him, if you keep bringing this up, we're not going to make it, because I can't sit at home and let my brain die. Maybe I will do something different. Maybe I will teach from home or consulting or something, but I cannot quit working. And he's like, it doesn't make me feel good. My wife has to work. You don't have to. I make enough that you don't have to work. And I'm thinking, yeah, but what if something happens? Then I got to go back in the workforce older, and I'm not willing to do that. And I told him, I said, okay, let's just reverse that role. How about you stay home every day and I just go to work? Oh, no, I can't do that. Okay, well, put yourself in my shoes. He said, I got it. I'm going to support you, whatever you need, wherever you need me at. Because like the Argentina thing will cost me several $1,000s to go, because they're not going to pay the expenses. Well, they may, I've got to ask, but sometimes they'll pay. Like when I went to Washington to speak, the company paid the airfare, paid the hotel, the conference. And I felt that was really a blessing. And they may do that with Argentina, but I said it may be several $1,000s. And he said, well, I guess I just need to go see Navy Federal and draw out the money so we can go, because you're going to do it. And I'm like, okay. And so, those type of things are things that are perks of it, that when you go to speaking free, or just put yourself out there. If you think you want to talk, and these organizations would rather hear from operators or analysts and people in the field than just the vendors, because they're really only there hawking their product. And I actually have a friend that has a chemical business, and she tried to hire me one time, and I said, I can't sell you anything. I can get you in the door. I can't sell your product. And she's like, yeah, teachers never can. It's like, okay, but I can get you in the door. I cannot sell your product. I'm sorry. That was never my forte. So I just,
someone else in the back of the room. And if you're interested in the product, go talk to the people in the back of the room. Yeah.
That's the way I do.
Yeah. No, that is true. People want to hear from operators, and there are more opportunities, especially I think since COVID, when people got used to being online. Because we started Water Citizens started online in 2012. Nobody thought you could do water conversations and really have a good conversation in an online setting, right? Until COVID, and now people are understanding how to. We've got our virtual water education lab. We're teaching people how to turn their expertise into a course. And because of course someone will pay for it. And then how to market that, how to fill that course, how to, and then that becomes an income that doesn't have you going out in the field, right? That you're able to capture that expertise and continue to pass along and support yourself at the same time. So,
and those courses are always good, because every time someone takes one, you get a residual income from it. That's kind of what I do for Stormwater University. And I had to teach myself a lot of this stuff. I actually taught a class last Thursday. It was a 6.5 hour class on water and wastewater regulations, from the Clean Water Act all the way up to emerging regulations that are coming out. And I had to teach myself. This was a 160-page presentation, and another lady had actually created the presentation originally. And when I listened to her put on this presentation, I'm like, I'm going to die from boredom. I can't. So I changed some of the stuff. I did add in a couple of little videos and stuff that could explain it real quicker, more than I could do, and show how it was affecting things. If you don't have proper septic tanks, like in Mississippi, Alabama, people were getting hookworm, and it's still going on today. And those are type things that people don't realize. And it was going on back then, and they called it the sharecropper drawl, but it was because the hookworms had messed with their learning capacities. And I had to teach myself all of this stuff before I could even teach this class. But after I taught it the first time, I get paid a set amount for every student that takes the class. And so the first time led to the next time. And then she contacted me the other day and said, hey, can we talk about some other courses? And I'm like, sure. What would you like to talk about? So those type of things I enjoy. It was a long class. I struggled to think I'm going to get through right, and keep it to the maximum time, because they are getting CEUs for these training, and to give them the information that they need and that they really are looking for out of these classes. And when you teach a class, I have expressed to her that this class is too short for all of this material because you're only getting an overview. So we're talking about now separating it and doing water and then wastewater, and so we can give people more than an overview on that training. But I say, yes, if you can get people into teaching these things and having it out there for people, and the more economical it is for people to take these things like this summit that's being put on, and you say it's free, that's a wonderful thing, because people don't have to ask their bosses, hey, can we afford for you to send me here, or can we afford for me to go do this? And it's a way to get training. The EPA offers some things too that are free online, and I'm taking a class next Tuesday on the PFAS and I think it's rule 15 for wastewater, and it's free. And so I put in for that just to take it to educate myself, so that then I can go and teach a course on this stuff. So there's a book that I have at home that's called the proximity theory, and it's put yourself in proximity of people who are doing what you want to do. Put yourself in proximity of people who have made it. I deal with a chemist who was one of the first ones who helped write these regulations for the EPA. We spoke at conferences together, and she and I are now friends. And so I try to keep those people a little closer to me and get that knowledge from them that I can get. And it makes it quite interesting that you never know who you're going to meet. Or I actually met the governor here when we opened our first biodiesel plant in Georgia, and he told me, said, I didn't know there was such a thing, Okay, so I have a picture maybe the governor. That was pretty cool. And so you just never know where it's going to lead you, from a 18-year-old wastewater trainee that said this will not last long, till 53 years old and trying to take over the world, as my future husband says. We're going to take on the world. So we're going to see how well that works.
I absolutely believe that, Angela Walker. You are got so many great things to come. I'm really excited. So glad that you could join us here today. And for everyone in our audience, you can go ahead and check out Angela's information is there on the speaker page. Is there anything as far as the website or something, if people want to reach out to you for more information, or if they've got a speaking engagement somewhere that they want to have you go to?
I actually have an email. It's just Angela G. Walker LLC @gmail.com, or I can be reached here at my email at my job, and that's a little strange. It's awalker@bgjwsc.org, and that's just the initials of our company, Brunswick Glen Joint Water and Sewer Commission. Or my cell is always available, 912-771-6696. Just leave me a message and tell me what you might need, and I'll give you a call back. I don't answer all the time because you're getting you're getting car warranties and other telemarketers. So if it's a number I don't know a lot of times, I'll let it go to voicemail, but just leave me a voicemail. I'll be glad to help in any way I can for anybody. If anybody's interested in anything, even if I don't know it, I'll find out for you. I'll get you somebody who can help you, because that's what we do. That's what we're supposed to do as women in this field. We've got to stick together, and because there are fewer of us, and hey, there's going to be a day when we are outnumbering these men. Yeah, we are. Yeah. We are. As I hope I live to see it. I do. That we are outnumbering men. And I tell you, as wastewater becomes not the stigma, as, oh, I don't want to work in wastewater. I actually teach a class on humans being the biggest detriment to this planet. And part of that, I will give a little a video of what wastewater treatment is like in some of the third world countries. And I'm like, okay, we got it made here in the US with our wastewater treatment compared to taping up a scuba diver suit and going down in a big poop pit to pull out a clog, or going down in manholes with nothing but shorts on and sewage water just running on your head, like in some places in India. Right. Those people are so ostracized that they're made to live in little cabins at the end of the community because they just have a continuous smell. So in the US, we've come a long way, and we're we hope that we continue to come a long way. Wastewater usually gets the less money of government, but it is a necessary thing. And there are things going on now to change the infrastructure, to fix our aging infrastructure and make it better. And I think as we get more environmentalists involved, that's why I do what I do. I'm an environmentalist. I've just put in to be on our coastal advisory committee here for the Georgia coast. I don't know if I'll be accepted, but I did put in my application. And I've also put in for a group that's looking for a facilitator to talk to communities here about our coastal climate and climate change and how it's affecting us, and to get citizens involved. So I want to change it because I have 2 little grandchildren that just love the ocean, and I want them to be able to enjoy and not have polluted waters that they cannot enjoy and swim in and do what they want to do. And I think that's the main thing. We have to protect our water. If we don't protect our water and our bees, we're not going to be here either. So we have to protect those things. And it takes people like us who have the longevity to say, this is the field I chose and this is what I'm going to do. And it's not always easy. It's not always pretty. And some days I come in and I say, well, I smell like poop today, or we have sand gnats here, and somebody will say, oh, what is that smell? And I'm like, oh, that's my odor perfume. It's the odor bug spray I had to put on my hair, had to put on this morning to keep the bugs off of me. But it's not, I have mosquito nets to go over me if we have to go and check waterways. If we have a sanitary sewer overflow and we have to go in some areas, I have mosquito nets, mosquito hats, so they can't get to me. So it's not always glamorous, but it is fun. It's never the same thing every day. So it was a good choice.
Yeah. It is a cool career path, and yeah, I mean, there's always something to do, and there's always new problems to solve, new challenges, and the opportunity to really know that we're doing something that matters. And I really hope that this summit, and hope that all of you watching today will come on back and keep watching all the videos. We got some tremendous women in all walks of water, and more great stories. So Angela Walker, thank you so much for joining us here today, and for all of our audience, keep that chat coming, keep watching the videos, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us for this extraordinary conversation, one of 45 extraordinary conversations we had as part of the Women of Water Get Real virtual summit, where we explored where and why women are leaking from the water career pipeline, how we can stop those leaks, and even bring women back to water. I hope that you will enjoy all of these amazing interviews. If you don't have a chance to watch all of them during the summit, you have the opportunity to join us with a power pack and get lifetime access to all the videos, as well as an opportunity to join us for 30 days in a brand new community where we will dig even deeper in live facilitated conversations about some of the issues that are facing women in water. Look forward to seeing you there. Please join us at watercitizen.org/women, watercitizen.org/women for more information. See you again soon.